course material. Now the files you're going to need, again, they live in assignment Maya files. And then one we're going to grab is this one, Bouncing Ball 2020. Okay, copy that one. And I'm just going to put this onto my desktop. There we go. And then go back to Maya, and I'm going to open up that file, Bouncing Ball 2020. Now, when we open up our shot, I see that the 2D pan and zoom tool has been activated. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is. This is a toggle. It's this little button right up here. And what this allows you to do, if you see I toggle the button, it switches between the shot camera view and a two-dimensional pan and zoom tool. So this tool is really useful if you want to two-dimensionally scale your view, but it doesn't change the camera. So I'll show you how this works. If you hold down the backslash key depends on your keyboard where it might be, the layout. Sometimes it's near the backspace key, but the backslash key looks like this. Sorry, that's a terrible color. There we go. That'll show up better. This key, that's the backslash key. When you hold that down and you use your middle mouse button, right, it will toggle between the two. Oh, well, of course, my computer, it doesn't. There we go. So when I hold this one and I hold it down, it lets me, if I use my right mouse button, it will let me zoom in and out. If I use my middle mouse button, it will let me pan, but I'm not moving the camera. You can see this is 2D pan and zoom. So it does not change your camera, doesn't move your camera at all. It's a two-dimensional cheat. It's just allowing you to scale your view or to move around. Okay, and if you hit the backslash key, then it'll go back to the 100% shot camera view. Okay, so that's the backslash key. Okay, so if you activate that, it turns on this little button. It's highlighted. The other way you'll know is down here. It'll say 2D pan and zoom. So you know that you're not looking at your camera at 100%. So when you play Blast, double check the video because that's what it'll say. And then you'll know, oops, I didn't reset the camera. So you just hit the backslash key. And I'm back to just the shot camera. So I got to go here, say all objects off, and then click on this. This way, when I select the ball, I'm not going to select geometry, deformers, or joints or other stuff. I just want to select the control curves. Okay. I'm going to do a little, just introduce the rig and how to use the rig. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of the camera view so I can toggle around in the perspective view. So I'm just going to go to panels, perspective view. And then I can tumble around and you can see over here is our shot camera. Here's our ground plane and here's the rig. So this rig is a little more complicated than the pendulum rig. At the bottom, we have what's called the layout node, right? So this is usually the top node, which we use to bring an object into a scene and scale it to the right size and position it in the right spot. A lot of times we don't animate this control. A lot of times we just use this to place the object and then leave it alone. You could use this, if I hit W to activate the move tool, I could use this to animate the ball, but it has some problems. One of the problems is the pivot point. The pivot point, when I rotate, is not going to allow me to rotate the ball in a nice pivot, right? So it's already got a disadvantage. So we're not going to use this. Don't use this to animate the ball. You're going to use this blue control around the equator. There are two controls around the equator. This blue one is for translating. This is to move the ball around. The red circle in the middle, this is for rotation. This is to rotate the ball. Okay, so this control, translation, the red one is how we're going to animate the spin. Now, at the poles of this rig, if I look at the top and bottom, you'll see there's a triangle there and there's a triangle there at the north and south pole. These are deformers. Hit W, you can squash and stretch the ball, right? So the deformers, you can move up and you can move side to side. If you orbit in a 3D space, you can move them forward and back. We're going to use them almost two-dimensionally, just up and down. So we want to be able to squash the ball and stretch the ball. And you can see there's definitely some range you have. You can really distort this thing, but eventually it breaks. This is no longer looking like it's geometry anymore. So that's the squash and stretch control. Now, sometimes what will happen is if I want, let's say I rotate this ball, or you can see that the texture is rotated. What if I wanted to stretch it in that direction with the stripes? I could kind of cheat it with this, kind of doing that, but it's not really doing a very accurate job. It's more like it's skewing, it's mashing the ball, but it's not really stretching it along the stripes. So if you want to be able to move these triangles, that's what this outer ring is for. This ring that goes around this side of the ball allows you to angle those deformers. So you can move the squash and stretch deformers to a position that you would like. And when you move them, now these line up. And if I switch my tool from world space to object space, then the axis points along there and I can get a very nice clean squash and stretch that follows the stripes. All right. So this control, if I zero it back out, this one allows you to rotate the deformers to a position you would like. I would recommend that you only use one deformer at a time because I've seen people do this trick. And again, it's not necessarily anybody's fault. You can grab these two controls and at the same time, and you can move the ball away from the pivot point. And now all hell is going to break loose because now this is no longer here. The translation you have now, you have to use this and these two to move the ball around. And it's very hard to clean up your scene. And I've seen this happen, right? People start to do things that they think is okay because they don't know it's not okay until they have to clean it up. So I've already broken everything that you could possibly think of. So I know all the little pitfalls. So you don't want to do this because if you do this, now the geometry of the ball is very far away from the rig. And the only thing I should be using to move this up and down is this blue control. Because what I could do is I could use the blue control to move it up, and then I could grab these two to put it down. And then when I go look at the graph editor, I'm all confused because this thing says I'm up and these things say I'm down, and they're fighting each other. And that means that now it's not simple. It's not easy to clean up. Now I'm counter animating. So these two controls, I would recommend you don't use them at the same time. And if you notice your ball is drifting away from the main rig, that's a problem. How do you fix it? Well, grab these two triangles, zero the rotations. That'll put it right back to where it should be. You use the blue navigation control to move the object up and down. And you use the red control to do spin. And you use one of the deformers to do a squash and stretch. Please ignore all this garbage. This is not important. So that's the rig. Okay, and I'm just going to zero everything, put everything back to the default start position. There's the ball.